But we begin tonight with a game at Cameron Indoor Stadium. A game that entering the night, you might have thought, well, first place Duke will take care of business. But at the end of this night, Duke is tied up at 9-3 at the top of the Atlantic Coast Conference with Notre Dame. And so we begin with that, Jeff Goodman. Duke loses 69-68 to Virginia. What happened?
You know, I think you want to blame it on youth in some regards, right? I mean, Mark Williams, he's still a sophomore. He makes a kind of a bonehead play there at the end. But honestly, shouldn't be in that position in the first place. You know, they're playing a Virginia team that is mediocre talent-wise, and I'm being kind, I think, to Tony Bennett. Now, they've gotten better over the course of the year, but ultimately, you cannot let PAOLO Banchero not get a shot in the second half and play A.J. Griffin, your best shooter, who's shooting 50% from three as a freshman, 2 minutes in the second half. To me, that's on K. That is on Mike Krzyzewski. I know defensively they weren't great, and he wanted to send a message. They probably came out with a little bit of a Carolina hangover. But ultimately, you got to get the ball to PAOLO. You got to make sure Griffin's on the court and he can make threes. He spaces the court. This was, honestly, I think this was on K as much as anything else.
T.O.
It's hard to argue that because PAOLO Banchero needs to touch the ball. He's been your go-to player all year. Now, I will say Virginia loves to trap the post when it comes in from the 45. That's the only thing that he had to know coming in. They were passing it to PAOLO, and he's looking immediately to the other side of the court. You got to put him in positions to score. And whenever you play Virginia, if you get it in there from the top of the key, they're a lot more apprehensive as far as how they're going to double team. So there's some different ways you can get him the ball. But I think it says a lot too, guys, the hangover effect. You play an emotional game against North Carolina about 48, 49 hours prior to that. To get the young team to move forward and move on to the next thing, that's difficult. You saw the same problem. UCLA loses to Arizona, an emotional game, really revved up. They go up to Arizona State and they lose in a tough one. And Arizona State's not great either. So the hangover effect for when guys get so involved in a game. You saw it with A.J. Griffin today too. Started out 0 for 5. I'm not sure what he ended up with, but started out 0 for 5 and 1 for 7 and really struggled. Yeah. So it's I think that's a real thing, especially when you have young players.
Theo, don't you have to trust a kid like A.J. Griffin? To me, he's a floor spacer. He's the guy that you're going to need out there. I think K was trying to prove a point because these guys weren't guarding the way he wanted them to guard. You got to have him in there at the end of the game.
You have to. And he's a guy who shot 50% coming into the game from three. You got to have some kind of floor spacing. There wasn't a whole lot. And Trevor Keels is just putting his head down and trying to get to the rim the entire time, going to his right hand. You got to figure out something else that's going to work. And Mark Williams, that third and fourth foul, that little elbow, that hurts. Killed him because then your rim protection. Now, Theo John did a fine job. He had 3 blocks, all this. Mark Williams changes the game. That's a huge thing for Duke.
Sure he does, but at the same time, PAOLO Banchero does not score in the second half. Let's get to PAOLO Banchero. You're talking about a surefire top 3 pick in the NBA draft. How does he not score a point, Goodman, in the second half?
So I think in the first half, if you watched him, he was actually able to get some decent looks right around the basket, and he missed them. And I think it got in his head a little bit because when you play Virginia, right, and you miss a couple of those around, even though I'm telling you, they were point blank. He got some good looks. Then it starts to get in your head. Virginia's this incredible defensive team. What are they doing to me? He's thinking a little bit too much. And again, they're not feeding him. And part of it's K, part of it's point guard play. I thought Roach was really good early. And like you said, T.O., then it became like the Trevor Keels put his head down and just explode to the basket. It's hard to do that against Virginia. Virginia's bigs were really good in this game. Yeah. And again, when I watched Virginia tonight, I said to myself, if this had been the Virginia team we'd seen all year, man, they could win the damn ACC. They've gotten a lot better. Their bigs have gotten a lot better. Shedrick was really, really good tonight. Now, I know you're at Cameron, so sometimes you're playing the best version of yourself. Other times you're going to shrink to the crowd, the Cameron Crazies. These guys, and I think a lot of it is Kihei Clark. That dude just plays like this. And the team, I think, responds to Kihei and Tony Bennett in these situations at Cameron, a huge environment. Kihei made the play of the game, I thought, when he tied up Theo John at the end there to get the jump ball possession arrow in Virginia's favor.
It's interesting to see because what did we say in November about Virginia? They are a year away. Well, we're in February now. Beekman's starting to figure it out. Shedrick's starting to figure it out. Cafaro's giving you good minutes. Now, they still don't have that top-end talent. We know that, but it's starting to come around. And Reese Beekman, I'm telling you guys, we said at the beginning of the season, he is really, really good, and he hit a massive shot tonight.
Those two guards, they are awesome defensively. Kihei and Beekman, I'll put that backcourt against any backcourt in the country defensively. Now, again, they're limited a little bit on the offensive end, especially Kihei, but man, I'm telling you, if Virginia gets in like a first four, you do not want to see the Virginia Cavaliers because Tony Bennett is still an elite level coach, one of the probably, I don't know, top 5 coaches in the game right now.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you. And just to give a thought on Virginia's metrics, they entered the evening with a net of 88. 1-4 against quadrant 1. So now you're 2-4. Your net's going to spike. I would expect that it gets into the 70s tomorrow, and that has you in the equation. They're 7-0 against quad 4, so it's not like they have a demoralizing loss. They are 2-3 against quadrant 3. So that's where you would get nicked up. But there is time. It's not like there's a lot of resume chances in the ACC. The question is, T.O., do you still believe that Duke will win the ACC regular season championship?
It's going to be close, and considering the fact that they're tied with Notre Dame right now, and there's not a whole lot, it's going to come down to a lot of head-to-head matchups with these top 3. I mean, Wake Forest is a half game out of first place. Who would have thought that was going to happen? But Duke has more talent than anybody. It's how they're going to proceed through this. Are they going to go through a cold spell? That's what scares me, because you're a young team. You got to figure those things out on the fly. I like Duke. I think they're the most talented team. And keep in mind, too, guys, ACC champions, that's not the regular season champions. What's considered ACC champions is tournament champions. So moving in, I think that's the goal for them moving forward, obviously. And they're going to be much better off, even if they do have to take some lumps like they did tonight with A.J. Griffin.
If this team didn't win an ACC regular season title, that would be a failure.
I'm not sure it'd be a failure. Yeah.
It would. You're not sure it would be a failure. There would be a major failure.
Come on. There's so much more talent.
That's not the goal.
About 5 NBA players in their team. The ACC stinks this year.
But what's the goal?
To a regular season title.
The goal is a national championship. But if you talk to any coach, they'll tell you they want a regular season title over a conference tournament title.
Yeah, there's something to be said there. I'll backtrack. It would not be good. They obviously are the most talented team. They should walk to it, but they are young and they need to go through those things. So in order to win those big ones at the end, sometimes you got to put away the immediate. That's all I'm saying.
One of the most shocking statistics you will find, period, and I'm not a huge stat guy, but it is the fact that Duke has not won an ACC regular season title since 2010. That's amazing. I mean, think about 12 years, and Tony Bennett has owned the league. I don't have the updated numbers, but he was like 15 games better over the last 8 years than Coach K, 25 games better than Roy, and like 35 games better than Boeheim.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an insane number. And again, like, I know what's Virginia? They're 9-5 right now, so they're still 2 games behind Notre Dame and Duke. I'm not counting it out. I'm not counting Virginia and Tony Bennett out. I don't think he can do it. But if anybody can pull it off and continue the reign over the ACC, it is Tony Bennett and Virginia.
Yeah. And Armand Franklin's coming along too. Like, he started out a little bit rough. He's getting more comfortable. Gardner has turned out. He's been able to knock down some shots from right around that free throw line area. I thought he played well. Jaden Gardner's not bad. Like undersized, sure, but he figures ways to be effective. I mean,
it was the bigs. The bigs were the difference tonight, and they just took it to to Duke in the first half. They just took it to them, drove it. You know, I mean, the crazy part is
ball faked all day.
Yeah, and drove it. He got it into the bigs, and the bigs were able to finish around the paint, even when Mark Williams was in the game. So I thought that was huge. The other thing is Duke has protected the three-point line better than almost any team in the country this year. And again, it was just kind of fitting and apropos that, like, on the final play of the game, Mark Williams, and you could break it down better than us, Theo, because you played, but Mark Williams got caught up there and in no man's land. He didn't know where to go. He was just standing in the paint rather than jumping out and trying to contest that wide open three by Beekman. Paolo jumped over and at least sort of contested it, but it was too late.
Well, they cross-matched. So Kihei Clark was inbounding. They cross-matched. They put Mark Williams on the ball. That's not a comfortable position. And who do all these people say that you have to guard more than anybody with 5 or 6 seconds left? The guy inbounding. But you cross-match because you think you have an advantage with 7'7" wingspan against 5'8", generously 5'8", and then he gets lost. That's just one of those things that happen. He just sinks back to his comfort zone. That's the 3 ball. And I think whenever Tony Bennett called that timeout coming in, they went out, they set up, they saw the cross match. He comes back in, brings those guys back in. I'd be shocked if he didn't see a little bit of that about to occur.
Yeah. Hey, Caden Shedrick, that's as good of a game as he's played all season. 16-6, 8 of 8 from the field. Here's my question here as we close down our first segment here. Field of 68 After Dark, Sirius XM, Channel 84. John Fanta, Jeff Goodman, Terrence Oglesby with you. Jeff, if there is a big picture concern for Duke in the NCAA tournament, what is that concern?
You know, it still, to me, might be point guard play, and Jeremy Roach has been much better, but it's still, again, inability to understand who needs the ball at the end of a game here tonight. Like, I get it. You've got a lot of guys that can play and do different things, but it's clear as day to me now your go-to guy should be Paolo, and your second guy should be Griffin. Those are your guys. It's funny because Wendell Moore was so valuable earlier in the season, and now he's become a really, really valuable piece. But ultimately, it's up to the point guard and obviously Kay to be able to make sure that Paolo can take advantage of matchups and his skill set. Like you said, Tio, face him up. He makes good decisions with the basketball. Face him up around the foul line. Find that kind of seam within Virginia's defense and let him read the defense and make a play.
Yeah, it all comes down to where he gets the ball, because that's how teams have had success against Virginia, by entering the ball into the post from the top of the key. Because as soon as you throw it in from the side, they're coming because their rotations are so good. If I'm looking at this Duke team in the tournament, the first thing I'm doing is trying to get Mark Williams in foul trouble. Because as soon as he goes out, there's a massive drop-off. And I love the energy that Theo John gives you. I love his physicality. He gives you a little bit of an edge, kind of like a Steven Adams role, if you will. But it's 10 to 12, 15 minutes max. More than that, there's a big drop-off, because I think Mark Williams provides a lot for you offensively too, the ability just to throw it up there. So Mark Williams in the tournament, if he gets in foul trouble on the wrong night, it could be disastrous for Duke.
They didn't have Griffin in there. They didn't have a floor spacer. They really don't have another guy that you can count on to make threes. So there are multiple issues that can rear their ugly head against Duke. I feel like they almost made those issues come to fruition a little bit more than they needed to tonight.
Yep. And on a night where Virginia hits 2 3-pointers, they still come away with a win at Cameron Indoor. Absolutely just something. And it speaks volumes about the kind of coach Tony Bennett is. We're going to take a break here on Sirius XM Channel 84. Field of 68 After Dark.